Greetings, true believers, and welcome to another insidious episode of History of the Marvel Universe. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more marvelous content. This week's tale begins with an atomic scientist by the name of Otto Octavius. A genius in both nuclear physics and robotic engineering, Octavius earned the nickname Dr. Octopus from the use of his mechanical tentacles, which allowed him to safely work with radioactive materials, or so he thought. One fateful day, a freak accident caused an explosion, fusing the tentacled harness to his body, giving him full mental control over the artificial appendages. With his mind also affected by the explosion, the respected scientist became a megalomaniacal criminal overnight and battled the masked vigilante Spider-Man. After his second defeat at the hands of the costumed wall crawler, Octavius was imprisoned and seemingly disarmed when his tentacled harness was successfully removed. However, the authorities never dreamed that Octavius would maintain mental control over his mechanical limbs even while they were separated from his body. And so Dr. Octopus escaped again to plot his revenge on Spider-Man. To aid him, Octavius recruited 5 other villains who had previously battled Spider-Man, forming the first incarnation of the Sinister Six. There was Electro, an electric lineman named Max Dillon who was struck by lightning while working on a power line and gained the power to manipulate electricity and store electrical energy within his body. Craven the Hunter was a big game hunter named Sergei Kravinoff whose desire to prove himself by hunting Spider-Man quickly developed into an obsession. Quentin Beck was a special effects master who took the costumed identity of Mysterio in an attempt to discredit and defeat Spider-Man to bolster his own reputation. William Baker, better known by the alias Flint Marko, was a career criminal whose body was transformed into living sand when he was bombarded by radiation while resting on a beach during an atomic test, thus becoming the Sandman. And the Vulture was an elderly inventor named Adrian Toombs who created a flying harness to take revenge on a former business partner and pursue a life of crime. However, Dr. Octopus knew that the various villains would not work well together and concocted a plan around that. First, he kidnapped a girl named Betty Brant, who coincidentally was with Spider-Man's Aunt May at the time. Betty was an employee of the Daily Bugle newspaper who was saved by Spider-Man during their previous encounter. If he wanted to rescue her again, Spider-Man would need to face the members of the Sinister Six in a gauntlet, defeating each one to learn the location of the next. That way, if the hero did manage to fight his way to Dr. Octopus, he would be worn down and easily defeated. However, Spider-Man bested Electro in battle at the power plant, he defeated Craven and the lethal leopards he had trained, he destroyed Mysterio's robotic X-Men and discovered his hidden chamber, he got past the Sandman when his airtight death trap backfired, and he once again overpowered the Vulture in aerial combat. All this led to an encounter with Dr. Octopus in which Spider-Man was dropped into a massive fishbowl. Although at a disadvantage, Spider-Man was able to eject enough of his web into the water that Dr. Octopus's arms were completely entangled and he was unable to fight or move. Spidey pulled the Mad Doctor out of the water before rescuing Betty Brant and May Parker. Thus, the Sinister Six were handed their first defeat and disbanded. Some years later, a different group of Spider-Man's rogues joined together to form a similarly named group, the Sinister Syndicate, although this group was more concerned with wealth than revenge on Spider-Man. They were led by the Beetle, a mechanical engineer named Abner Jenkins who used his aviation expertise to create a flying armored suit and become a supervillain. Joining him were the following: Hydro-Man, a seaman named Morris Bench who became a criminal after a freak accident gave him the ability to control water and even transform his own body into living water. Speed Demon, originally a mediocre chemist named Jim Sanders, he made multiple attempts to create a speed-enhancing formula until he was approached by the alien gamesman known as the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster completed the formula, and in exchange, Sanders joined the Squadron Sinister as the Whizzer, naming himself after the World War II hero. After several failed encounters with the Avengers, he eventually improved his formula and broke out on his own to become the super-fast supervillain known as Speed Demon. Boomerang, a crooked baseball player turned mercenary Fred Myers, first gained his high-tech equipment while working for the subversive organization known as the Secret Empire, and has employed his skills as a costumed villain ever since. And the Rhino, a Russian thug giving super strength and a powerful armored hide by a spy agency from his homeland, but turned on his handlers to use his power for his own benefit. Together, the Sinister Syndicate battled Spider-Man and the Simkarian mercenary Silver Sable, but they were defeated due in part to the interference of the Sandman, who was on the path to reforming at the time. Sometime after this, Dr. Octopus assembled his old allies to form their sordid cadre once again. By this point, the Sandman had given up his life of crime, but Dr. Octopus coerced him into rejoining the group by threatening the innocent family he was living with. Additionally, one of their original members, Craven the Hunter, had taken his own life after he was satisfied that he'd proven himself Spider-Man's superior. And so Dr. Octopus sought out a replacement with Jason Philip Macendale, the Second Hobgoblin. Macendale was originally a costumed mercenary called the Jack-O-Lantern, who had a bitter rivalry with the original Hobgoblin. Led to believe that the Hobgoblin was Daily Bugle reporter Ned Leeds, Macendale hired the foreigner to have Leeds killed and stole his costume and equipment. In truth, Leeds was being mind-controlled by the real Hobgoblin, Roderick Kingsley, who retired to Europe, his crimes undiscovered. By the time Macendale joined the Sinister Six, he had been fused with a creature from the hell dimension of Limbo to gain demonic powers. Ock's goal this time was not simple revenge, but world domination. He explained to the other villains that he planned to hold the world hostage by loading a deadly chemical poison into a modified satellite and threatening to unleash it on the Earth's population unless the Sinister Six were declared the undisputed masters of the entire planet. The only antidote to the poison required a rare mineral known as Burundite, which the Sinister Six stole the only known supply. Of course, the group was opposed by Spider-Man as well as the Sandman, who betrayed his villainous teammates. However, Octavius was prepared for the Sandman's betrayal and used a weapon designed to turn him to glass. While Spider-Man battled the other four, Dr. Octopus successfully loaded the poison onto the satellite and launched it into the atmosphere. However, Ock's duplicity was revealed when the Hobgoblin dosed Spider-Man with the poison gas, only for it to have no effect aside from a short coughing fit. As it turns out, Octavius's promises of world domination were merely a ploy to encourage the others to join him. The poison he'd launched into the atmosphere was actually a chemical that would uniquely affect cocaine addicts, causing any attempts to use hard drugs to result in extreme convulsions. Burundite was indeed the only antidote for the effects, and with the global supply now under his control, Octavius could have any rich and powerful drug user in his pocket. Betrayed, the other members of the Sinister Six fled before the police arrived. Spider-Man subsequently battled Dr. Octopus and secured the Burundite, which, with the help of the mighty Thor, was then dispersed into the atmosphere alongside Ock's chemical, rendering it inert before it could spread across the Earth. However, Octavius soon returned, armed with a set of adamantium tentacles he'd constructed sometime earlier but was initially prevented from using. This time he conspired with Electro, having him gather the other four members on the pretense of seeking revenge on Octavius. The others even recruited the Sandman by blowing up the house he was staying at, killing the family who owned it and making him think that Octavius had done so. When the five prepared to attack, Sandman figured out that he'd been duped and turned on the villains, only for Dr. Octopus to turn him to glass once more. Furthermore, the remaining five united once again when Ock's hideout was attacked by Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. This time their alliance was an uneasy one, as Octavius convinced the others to help him raid an other-dimensional armory for high-tech weaponry and use it to storm a facility belonging to the terrorist group Hydra and take control of some of their orbital weaponry. Ock also disposed of the Sandman, shattering his glass body into tiny fragments. Furthermore, they recruited their 6th member with Gog, a giant alien monster who'd landed in the Savage Land as an infant and previously allied itself with Craven the Hunter. When Spider-Man first encountered Gog, the creature was still relatively young, standing at about 30 feet tall. But by the time the mammoth monster had joined the Sinister Six, he had grown to 10 times that height. This time Spider-Man was able to prevail with the aid of Ghost Rider, Deathlock, the Fantastic Four, Nova, Solo, and the Hulk. After the villains were defeated, Mr. Fantastic reportedly shrunk Gog down and returned him to a dimension where he could feel at home. Not only that, but Sandman had survived being shattered and returned as a man made of broken glass shards. He attacked Octavius, nearly killing him, but was talked down by Spider-Man. However, Dr. Octopus would meet his demise sometime later, slain by Spider-Man's insane clone, Kane. Shortly after that, the remaining members of the Sinister Six, Mysterio, Electro, Hobgoblin, who by then had been separated from his demonic half to become fully human, and the Vulture, who at the time had temporarily regained his youth, gathered once more. They were contacted by Doc Ock's cousin, Elias Hargrove, who blackmailed the four into retrieving equipment belonging to Octavius that had been confiscated by the authorities. However, Hargrove was actually being manipulated by Mysterio, whose true goal was to obtain Octavius's files on New York's underworld for himself. Convoluted plots aside, the attempts were ultimately foiled due to the interference of Spider-Man, who at one point donned Doc Ock's tentacles for himself, Kane, the twisted clone that had killed Otto Octavius in the first place, and Ben Reilly, a more heroic clone of Spider-Man known as the Scarlet Spider. Kane was also responsible for the death of Craven's son, Vladimir Kravinoff, the Grim Hunter, and so the Hobgoblin and Mysterio recognized him as a genuine threat to their lives, and again called together Electro and the Vulture, along with several others to form the Sinister Seven. Joining them this time was the Beetle, who was previously the leader of the Sinister Syndicate, Scorpia, a mobster named Elaine Cole who was enhanced with armor and weapons similar to that used by the Scorpion, and the Shocker, a safecracker named Herman Schultz who created a pair of gauntlets allowing him to project powerful vibroblasts. The Seven launched a preemptive strike on Kane, attempting to destroy him before he could kill any more of them. The plan nearly backfired when the mad clone tried to kill the Hobgoblin, only to be stopped by Spider-Man, who, to complicate matters further, was dressed in the Scarlet Spider's costume at the time. The scene erupted into chaos, but everybody involved escaped with their lives. But one of Kane's victims would not remain dead, as before his death, Dr. Octopus made a backup copy of his mind, which operated as an artificial intelligence construct called the Master Programmer, a play on his former alias, the Master Planner. The technology to do this was developed by a woman named Carolyn Traynor, who succeeded Octavius after his death, obtaining his tentacles and becoming the second Dr. Octopus. To fully resurrect Octavius, Traynor made a deal with an offshoot of the ninja death cult, the Hand, who could raise the dead with a mystic ritual. To prevent Octavius from becoming a brainwashed thrall of the Hand, at the moment of his revival, Traynor endowed Octavius with the thoughts and memories of the Master Programmer, restoring the original Dr. Octopus. There are some reports that a wealthy gentleman named Gustav Fiers assembled the Sinister Six for an elaborate plot to gain unimaginable riches, but was ultimately foiled by Spider-Man. For that version of the team, Dr. Octopus, Electro, Mysterio, and an again elderly Vulture returned. However, by that point, the Hobgoblin that was on the Sinister Six, Jason Macendale, had been killed by his predecessor, Roderick Kingsley, the original Hobgoblin. And so the last two slots on the team were filled by the Master of Disguise, known as the Chameleon, secretly Craven's half-brother, Dmitry Smerdyakov, and the Gentleman's personal assassin, a young woman known only as Pity. Meanwhile, the Sandman was abducted by Bentley Whitman, the mad scientist known as the Wizard. The two men were actually allies years prior as members of the Frightful Four, shortly after Sandman's initial involvement with the Sinister Six. Seeking to use Marco for his own ends again, the wizard used his id machine to regress the Sandman back to his more villainous personality. Now desiring revenge on Octavius for his previous deceptions and betrayals, the Sandman gathered his old allies once again. The original Mysterio, Quentin Beck, was thought to be dead at the time, but his protege, Daniel Burkhart, had taken over the identity and answered Sandman's summons. The Vulture returned along with Electro and a new Craven the Hunter. This Craven, Alyosha Kravenov, was the son of the original and half-brother to the Grim Hunter. Their goal was seemingly simple: to kill Dr. Octopus and capture his associate, U.S. Senator Stuart Ward. Things quickly became more complicated as a man named Arthur Stacy, the brother of deceased police captain George Stacy, intended on assassinating the senator. Ward had been mutated by an alien pathogen, making him dangerous to mankind, and so Stacy wanted to eliminate him before he became a problem, but was stopped by Spider-Man. The various villains arrived on the scene seeking to execute their plan when Spider-Man got in their way once again. And things only became even more complicated when one of Spider-Man's most lethal foes, Venom, arrived as well. Venom was a disgraced journalist named Eddie Brock who bonded with an alien creature that was previously worn by Spider-Man, giving Brock similar powers and even greater strength. And at this point he was single-minded in his desire to kill the wall-crawling hero. However, the scene then erupted into chaos when Stacy saved Spider-Man with a firebomb. Venom attacked the other villains, and in the confusion, Octavius slipped away with Ward while Stacy and Spider-Man separately pursued them. However, Mysterio offered for Venom to join them, making him their new sixth member. Things soon came to a head when the Sinister Six found Octavius, Ward, Spider-Man, and Stacy all together. However, the Sandman told Spider-Man to take Stacy and run, which Venom considered a betrayal since he was only interested in destroying Spider-Man, and of course the scene erupted into yet another battle. This time the fighting ended when Senator Ward instinctively used his mysterious powers, blasting away the various villains. Sandman and his cohorts abandoned their objectives, and the Sinister Six escaped, or so it seemed. Mysterio and Electro were evidently working for some unseen benefactor and abducted Ward in the confusion. However, the threat posed by Ward and the alien pathogen in his body was ultimately neutralized, but that's another story entirely. Another gathering of Spider-Man's foes was brought together when Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, assembled the Sinister 12. This group included former members of the Sinister Six and the Sinister Syndicate such as Electro, Sandman, Vulture, Chameleon, Boomerang, Hydro-Man, and the Shocker. New members included the Lizard, a brilliant biologist named Kurt Connors who inadvertently transformed himself into a reptilian creature in his attempts to regrow his lost arm, Hammerhead, a career criminal with an unbreakable metal skull who modeled himself after 1920s gangsters, and Tombstone, a mob enforcer turned mob boss after a freak accident during an attempted chemical theft endowed him with super strength and bulletproof skin. The final member of the Sinister 12 was Venom, but not Eddie Brock. This Venom was Mac Gargan, formerly the Scorpion who had bonded with the alien symbiote after Brock was diagnosed with cancer and gave it up. Spider-Man and the Black Cat attempted to battle the 12 and fortunately were soon aided by Daredevil, the Fantastic Four, and several Avengers. While the assembled heroes defeated most of the Sinister 12, Spider-Man went off to save his wife, Mary Jane Watson Parker, from the Green Goblin himself. He was also aided by Dr. Octopus, who had been brainwashed by the US government to stop Norman Osborn. It's also been reported that another version of the Sinister Six was assembled by Octavius during the superhero Civil War, but they were quickly found and defeated by Captain America's secret Avengers. There was also an unrelated but similarly named group called the Savage Six who battled Flash Thompson while he was Venom. This team included the Crime Master, the Human Fly, Jack-O-Lantern, Megatack, Death Adder, and Toxin. Meanwhile, Dr. Octopus's body started to fail him. After so many years of injuries sustained from battling superpowered opponents, he began to degenerate and would likely die within a year. Slipping into total madness, Octavius wanted to take most of humanity with him and assembled the Sinister Six once again. He hired Sandman, Mysterio, Electro, Chameleon, and the Rhino, claiming that he wanted to mitigate the effects of climate change and be remembered as a hero. However, his true goal was to use stolen tech to launch orbital weapons that would superheat the Earth and destroy most of the population, so that he would be known as the greatest mass murderer who ever lived. He was opposed again by Spider-Man, who fought alongside Silver Sable and the Black Widow. They were also able to convince Mysterio to help them, this being the original Mysterio, Quentin Beck, and not his replacement, Daniel Burkhart. During this plot, Octavius was even able to mind control 5 of the Avengers: Captain America, Hawkeye, Red Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor as a surrogate Sinister Six. Of course, against all odds, Octavius was ultimately defeated by Spider-Man and the world was saved once again. While Dr. Octopus died sometime after that, it was not the end of Otto Octavius. Before his body perished, Octavius successfully transplanted his mind into the body of Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Flashed with Peter's life experiences, Otto understood his sense of responsibility and swore to use his second chance not as a villain, but as a superior Spider-Man. And one of the first things he encountered under this identity was a new group calling themselves the Sinister Six, which included Speed Demon, the Shocker, and Boomerang. The 3 new members were Overdrive, a criminal with the power to take control and supercharge any vehicle with nanomachines, the Living Brain, a sophisticated computer within the body of a simple automaton that Spider-Man first encountered back in high school, and the new Beetle, Janice Lincoln. The daughter of Tombstone, Lincoln obtained her flying armored suit from Baron Zemo and the Fixer, former allies of the original Beetle. This new team was soon defeated by the violent new Spider-Man, who took the Living Brain for himself and reprogrammed it. Keeping his true identity a secret, Otto later coerced his old allies into working under him as Spider-Man, including Mysterio, Chameleon, the Vulture, Electro, and Sandman. However, this was done through threats, manipulation, and mind control, and so the so-called Superior Six did not last long. Boomerang and his group continued to operate as the Sinister Six, albeit with only 5 members and middling success. Shocker suggested going with the name Sinister Syndicate, but that idea was shot down by former Syndicate members Boomerang and Speed Demon. At one point, Boomerang made a deal with a crime lord known as the Owl to expand their ranks and form the Sinister 16. The added members included the Human Fly, Man Mountain Marco, Armadillo, Shriek, Mirage, Cyclone, the Squid, the Spot, the Clown, Bybeast, Scorcher, and Kangaroo. This team was very short-lived, as Boomerang was constantly betraying others for his own purposes. That eventually led to the dissolution of the 5-membered Sinister Six as well, but for their full exploits you can read The Superior Foes of Spider-Man. Of course, Peter Parker eventually regained control of his body and became the true, amazing Spider-Man once more. For a brief time, he taught a class of mutant students for the X-Men, during which time he battled the Sinister 66, a group which included, well, nobody, actually. It consisted entirely of solid holograms created by the X-Men villain Mojo. However, Spider-Man and the X-Men did encounter a group calling themselves the all-new Sinister Six, led by Swarm, a Nazi scientist who's made of bees. His teammates included Delilah, the Trapster, the Squid, Killer Shrike, and 8-Ball. More noteworthy was the Sinister Six that was assembled by Aaron Davis. Formerly the Prowler, Davis was the uncle of the younger Spider-Man, Miles Morales. After obtaining the Iron Spider armor, Davis assembled his own Sinister Six with the goal of stealing a decommissioned S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier and selling it to the Latvian politician Lucia von Bardis. The Sandman returned for this version of the team, and the original Hobgoblin, Roderick Kingsley, joined for the first time. The Spot, who was briefly a member of the Sinister 16, also joined. He was originally a research scientist named Jonathan Owen who worked for the Kingpin, but gained the ability to create two-way portals. Also joining for the first time was the new Electro, Francine Fry. A consort of the original Electro, Max Dillon, she was inadvertently killed by Dillon when he lost control of his power while kissing her. However, she was subsequently revived by the Jackal's cloning technology. Since Dillon's DNA was on her body when she was resurrected, she gained his powers and became the new Electro. The final member was Laurie Baumgartner, one of the two bombshells, each of whom had the power to fire explosive energy blasts from their hands. However, the other bombshell, her daughter Lana, was close friends with Miles Morales, the new Spider-Man. And so this version of the Sinister Six was ultimately defeated by Morales and his teammates, the Champions. Of course, this wasn't the last time Spider-Man's enemies would unite. Since then, Janice Lincoln, the second Beetle, formed an all-female villain group called the Syndicate. This group included former Sinister Six members, Scorpia and Electro, and newcomers, White Rabbit and Lady Octopus. Although you may remember Lady Ock as Carolyn Traynor, the second Dr. Octopus. A new Savage Six was also put together by a revived Craven the Hunter during the Hunted event. This version consisted of the Vulture, the Scorpion, the Tarantula, Stegron the Dinosaur Man, King Cobra, and the Rhino. This group was also involved in the recent events of Sinister War, which features 6 Sinister teams of 6. However, that's all I've got for you for this video, but thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe for more Marvelous content. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what Marvel hero or villain you want to hear about next, and as always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page, where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here, and you can vote on a video topic to be added to the schedule. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!